Hello YouTube. So this is going to be a run through of a really simple exercise to improve your hip mobility. If you're a CrossFitter, you're a weightlifter, you're a powerlifter, or you're into any sort of sport, this is going to be really beneficial. And this particular exercise, I'm not saying it's going to solve all your problems, but it's way more effective than a lot of the good looking yoga poses that you see, or pigeon stretches and stuff like that. So we'll start off here. So I'm doing this with one of my clients, Paul, and we'll just play this video and I'll kind of chat you through it. So starting position, set up, we've got my knees at 90 degrees, coming away from the wall, my feet are flat on the wall, and then my torso is just coming away from the wall. So we're at a nice 90 in this position. So set up there, just get used to that. From this position, what we're going to do, I place my hand on the top of my glute on the outside of the hip there. All we're going to do in this position, really simple. So watch here. I've got a lot of movement with this. You won't have as much. We're going to shift that top hip over and back. So watch me again. This is over here. You can see I'm using that hand just to guide it. My torso isn't moving. It's just the hip shifting over. So this is slightly over the other knee. Using that hand just to guide it in this position. Just explain this, running through this with Paul. Good. So shift it over. And then from this position, holding it in the end range on the top leg, we're going to try tap the bottom knee to the top knee. If you've done this correctly, this should be really challenging, and you should feel some nice contractions in the groin, but also really deep in the hip. So a few reps here, anywhere from 5 to 10, depending on how difficult you find it. A really important point here, if I don't shift over, so if I just pull it back a touch. So if I'm in this position, I don't shift over at all. That movement is really easy. So you know you're doing it wrong if you haven't shifted that top leg over far enough, okay? So another quick point which I have forgotten, in the setup, what you also want to do, you won't be able to see this, but with your torso, you want like a little mouse hole underneath your torso. Not the whole torso, but just where your obliques are. So you want to create a nice little pigeonhole, mouse hole, just under here, so you've got a little bit of a gap there. This will switch your obliques on and it'll make the exercise a lot more effective. So little pigeonhole in this position, hand on that top hip / glute, shifting it over, practice that shifting, then shifting over into that end range position, holding it there, and then moving that bottom knee to the top knee. Explore the rep range there, just whatever you find challenging. Okay, so then just fast forward this on a little bit. So we've got Paul, and we get him set up in the same position. So if you watch him here, I'm just helping him learn to shift that over. You can see he's moving his feet, his torso here, so it's not perfect by any means. We're just kind of working our way through it. And then you can see he's really struggling just to get the position initially. But once he does have it, he's working very hard to move that move the bottom knee to the top knee. And then if we spin just a little bit further on, good. So again, he's pretty much nailed this now. He's shifted over. He could shift over a little bit more, to be honest, here if I'm watching this back. So he probably hasn't got the mobility quite yet. Yeah, he needs to be a little bit more shifted over that way, and then he can move this bottom knee to the top knee. You're probably wondering why this is more effective than your typical yoga stretches and the rest of it, pigeon stretches. Well, those stretches, you're stretching the tissue, so you're stretching the muscles, tendons, etc. But before we actually get to that stage, if we take it back, what are they actually attached onto? They're attached onto bones. So in this case, the pelvis, which is what we're getting to move with this exercise, isn't being moved in those static stretches. Think about it. So in a pigeon pose, as an example, you're stretching the tissues attached to the pelvis, i.e. let's say the hip flexors would be in the pigeon. Most of that would be hip flexors. Again, it's attached to the pelvis, but you're not actually moving the pelvis. So if we can't get good movement at the thing that it's attached to, you got no chance just stretching the tissue because you're not going to get anywhere. So with this exercise, you'll notice a difference side to side in your ability to shift. So on pull, not a massive difference. What I mean is you'll notice that on one side you can't shift the top leg over as far. On the other side it might be a little bit more laboured, or you might not quite have as much range of motion. Really, really important to get that pelvis moving before you go into your static stretches, because if it can't move efficiently, and again this hip shifting, so this back and forth with that top leg, that's replicating what we're doing in everyday life. So when you're walking, your pelvis is shifting up and down with each leg, yeah? When you're running, it's doing the same thing, up and down. So if it can't do that effectively, you've got no chance if you're just going straight into static stretches, pigeon stretches, which is just stretching the tissue. Get the actual components working first, i.e. the pelvis in this case, but it could be, with another injury, it could be something different like the rib cage or something else. Get the attachments working, the attachment points, i.e. the pelvis, working smoothly and actually moving how it's supposed to function, before attacking things with static stretches that aren't going to be particularly effective. So key points there again: set up 90 degrees. I'll just go back to me doing it. Little pigeonhole, whatever you want to call it, just under the obliques. We've got a little bit of a gap. Feet flat on the wall. Hand on that top hip / glute, shifting over. Just practice 5 to 10 reps shifting, and then the actual exercise is holding in that top position, so shifted over, and moving that bottom knee to the top knee, so just tapping it lightly. Again, you'll know you're doing this wrong if you haven't shifted over, like in this position here, and it's just incredibly easy to move that bottom knee. You'll be like, oh, what's this doing? Okay, really, really simple exercise there. Give it a go. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel, comment if you found this useful, or if you want any more videos explaining these exercises in a little bit more detail.